My name is Margot, and I'm 32 years old. Right now, I'm standing in my apartment on Thanksgiving evening, holding a wine glass, surrounded by 50 people who aren't my family. In about 10 minutes, I'm going to tell them a truth that will destroy my family's perfect image forever. This morning, I sat through another holiday dinner where I was completely invisible, where my father gave a 15-minute toast, praising everyone except me. Again. But tonight is different. Tonight, I'm done being the ghost in my own family. Let me tell you how I got here. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button right now because you're going to relate to every single word of what I'm about to share. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications because stories like this remind us we're not alone. Now, let me take you back to this morning, to the moment everything finally broke. I come from what looks like a perfect family on paper. My father, Douglas, is a successful corporate lawyer at 58, the kind of man who commands respect in every room he enters. My mother, Constance, is 55 and has spent decades perfecting her role as a socialite and charity organizer, always immaculately dressed and obsessed with appearances. Then there's my older sister, Bianca, who's 35, married to a wealthy man named Fletcher, and blessed with two perfect children who perform on command. My younger brother, Preston, is 29, a startup founder whose company gets featured in tech magazines, engaged to a woman named Sloane, who looks like she stepped out of a catalog. And then there's me, Margot, the middle child, a graphic designer who works freelance, single, and somehow always existing in the margins of every family photo and every family conversation. The pattern started so long ago that I can't even remember when I first noticed it. Every major holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter brunches, my family has this sacred ritual. After dinner, my father stands at the head of the table, raises his wine glass, and delivers a toast. He goes around the table, acknowledging each person, listing their accomplishments, expressing his pride and gratitude. For Bianca, it's always something like, our brilliant daughter who graduated summa cum laude from Yale, who has raised two exceptional children, who organized the charity gala that raised hundreds of thousands for the Children's Hospital. For Preston, it's our entrepreneurial son who's changing the tech world, who just closed another massive funding round, whose vision inspires everyone around him. For Fletcher, it's the backbone of our family, a wonderful son-in-law who supports Bianca in everything she does. For Sloane, it's the beautiful addition to our family. We're so blessed to have you joining us soon. My mother gets acknowledged as the heart of this home, the woman who makes everything possible. Even extended family members get their moment. Uncle Wade, who always brings laughter, Aunt Loretta, who traveled so far to be here, and then there's me. Sometimes my father skips me entirely, moving from one sibling to the other as if I'm not even sitting there. Other times, if someone seems to notice the omission, he'll add a quick afterthought, and of course, Margot is here too, before immediately moving on to thank someone else. No mention of my work, my achievements, my existence beyond physical presence. Just acknowledgement that yes, technically, I showed up. I used to think maybe I was being oversensitive, maybe I was imagining the disparity. But last Christmas proved I wasn't imagining anything. My father spent 3 full minutes praising Bianca's charity work, 2 minutes celebrating Preston's latest funding round. And when it came to me, nothing. I had just won a regional design award, something significant in my industry, something I'd worked years to achieve. I'd mentioned it during appetizers, hoping someone would acknowledge it during the toast. Instead, my father never said my name. Not once. When I tried to bring it up privately afterward, he seemed genuinely confused that I was upset, telling me not to be so sensitive, that not everything is about me. That was just one example in a lifetime of examples. At Easter 2 years ago, my mother spent 20 minutes showing everyone photos of Bianca's children, then pulled up Preston's engagement photos on her tablet, and when I offered to show pictures from a design conference I'd spoken at, she asked me to go check on the ham in the kitchen instead. When I announced my promotion to senior designer 3 Thanksgivings ago, Everyone said that's nice in unison, then immediately pivoted to discussing Preston's new Tesla. The annual family newsletter that gets sent to relatives every Christmas tells the story most clearly. I found copies going back 5 years. Year after year, full paragraphs about Bianca's life, detailed stories about Preston's company. And for me, one sentence like Margot continues her design work, or Margot is doing well. My entire year reduced to fewer words than they used to describe the family dog. I've spent my whole life trying to earn their recognition. I worked harder than both my siblings in school, graduated with honors, built a successful freelance business from nothing, won industry awards, signed major clients. Nothing was ever enough. Every achievement was met with polite disinterest, every success minimized or ignored entirely. I started developing anxiety before family gatherings, my stomach twisting for days beforehand, hoping this time would be different. 6 months ago, my therapist helped me see what I'd been denying for years. This wasn't normal family dynamics. This was a pattern of exclusion, of being systematically erased from my own family's narrative. She asked me what would happen if I stopped seeking their validation, if I created my own celebration with people who actually valued me. That question planted a seed that grew into the plan I executed today. This morning, driving to my parents' house for Thanksgiving, I made a decision. I would observe everything carefully, document every slight, every dismissal, every moment of invisibility. I brought my phone fully charged, ready to record if necessary. I told myself that if this Thanksgiving went like every other holiday, if I was once again treated as an afterthought in my own family, I would finally take action. I would stop begging for crumbs of affection from people who had spent 32 years showing me I didn't matter to them. I would find out, once and for all, if I was truly as invisible as I felt, or if I was somehow misunderstanding everything. Spoiler alert, I wasn't misunderstanding anything. If anything, it'd been underestimating how little I meant to them. I arrived at my parents' mansion at 10 in the morning, just like I was told to. The house is one of those sprawling estates in the suburbs, the kind with a circular driveway and professionally maintained landscaping, the kind that screams old money even though my parents only bought it 15 years ago. I let myself in through the side door, already knowing what would happen next. My mother was in the kitchen, directing the catering staff Shed hired for the day because Constance Bennett would never do all the cooking herself, not when there are appearances to maintain. She glanced up when I walked in, gave me a brief smile, and immediately asked me to start setting the table in the dining room. No hug, no how are you, just straight to assigning tasks. I was the help essentially, arriving early to work while the real family members could show up fashionably late and be treated like honored guests. Bianca and Preston arrived at noon, their arrivals timed to miss all the preparation work. I watched from the dining room as my mother rushed to the front door, arms wide open, gathering Bianca into a hug that lasted at least 2 minutes. She stroked Bianca's hair, told her how beautiful she looked, asked about every detail of her morning. Preston got the same treatment, my mother holding his face in her hands, telling him how handsome he was, how proud she was of him. My father emerged from his study, poured Preston a glass of premium whiskey from his private collection, and they stood in the living room discussing Preston's company like it was the most fascinating subject in the world. Fletcher arrived with Bianca, and my father clapped him on the shoulder like they were old war buddies. Sloane came with Preston, and my mother cooed over her engagement ring for the 100th time. Meanwhile, I finished setting the table, put out the place cards my mother had made, arranged the centerpiece, and nobody offered me so much as a glass of water. The pre-dinner gathering in the living room was the first real attack, though I didn't fully recognize it as such until later. Everyone assembled with drinks, the catering staff circulating with appetizers, and the conversation naturally centered on achievements and updates. Fletcher launched into a story about his recent promotion to senior partner at his law firm, a huge accomplishment that came with a significant salary increase and corner office. Everyone listened raptly, asking questions, offering congratulations, toasting his success. When he finished, there was a natural lull in conversation, and I saw my opening. I mentioned, trying to sound casual but feeling my heart pound, that I'd just signed my biggest client yet, a $50,000 contract for a complete brand redesign, the kind of project that would establish my reputation in the industry. I'd been working toward landing a client this size for 5 years. My mother looked at me for exactly 2 seconds, said, "That's nice, dear," then immediately turned to Bianca and asked her to tell everyone about the kids' school play coming up next month. The conversation shifted instantly, everyone focusing on Bianca's children, and my accomplishment disappeared into the air like it had never been spoken. I felt my face flush hot, that familiar sensation of being erased in real time. The second attack came shortly after, though attack feels like too strong a word for something so insidiously polite. Bianca's children, Hadley, who's 7, and Brooks, who's 5, had prepared a performance for the family. They stood in front of the fireplace and recited a poem they'd memorized, something about gratitude and family and blessings. They were adorable, and their performance was genuinely sweet, but the reaction was absurdly over the top. Everyone applauded like they'd just witnessed a Broadway debut. My father filmed the entire thing on his phone. My mother cried actual tears. Bianca beamed with pride. Fletcher looked like he might burst with joy. After the children finished, my grandmother Pearl, my mother's mother, who's 78 and has never particularly liked me, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief and declared it the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Then she turned to me, and I knew what was coming before she even opened her mouth. "Margot, dear, when are you going to settle down and have children of your own?" she asked, her voice dripping with that particular tone older relatives use when they're criticizing you under the guise of concern. I explained, keeping my voice steady, that I was focused on building my career right now, that I'd just signed a major client and was expanding my business. Pearl waved her hand dismissively and said, "Well, not everyone is meant to be a mother, some people are just meant to be aunts." The entire family laughed. Actually laughed. Like my childless state was a punchline. Like my career ambitions were amusing rather than valid. I smiled because what else could I do? But inside I felt something crack. The third attack was the seating arrangement at dinner. My mother had made place cards, elegant calligraphy on cream cardstock, very sophisticated. The head of the table seated my father and mother, naturally, with Bianca and Fletcher to their right, Preston and Sloane to their left. The children sat nearby where they could be fawned over. And me, I was placed at the far end of the table, so distant from the main conversation that I might as well have been in another room. The seats on either side of me were initially empty, creating a literal buffer zone between me and the rest of the family. Eventually, those seats were filled when Uncle Wade arrived late, already half drunk, and Aunt Loretta, who barely speaks to anyone. I spent the entire meal unable to participate in the main conversation happening at the other end of the table, unable to hear most of what was being said, physically excluded from my own family's Thanksgiving dinner. When I tried to join in once, raising my voice to comment on something my father said, everyone turned to look at me with this confused expression, like they'd forgotten I was there, and then they went right back to their conversation without acknowledging what I'd said. But the final breaking point, the moment that sealed my decision, was the toast. After the main course, my father stood with his wine glass raised, and the room fell silent in that reverent way it always does when Douglas Bennett is about to speak. He cleared his throat, looked around the table with this warm expression I've seen 1,000 times, and began his annual gratitude speech. He spoke for 15 minutes. I timed it on my phone, which I'd placed in my lap, recording audio so I'd have proof later that I wasn't exaggerating. He started with my mother, praising her as the heart of our home, the woman who makes everything possible, whose grace and strength hold this family together. He moved to Bianca, calling her an exceptional mother who's raising 2 beautiful souls, a brilliant fundraiser who raised $200,000 for the Children's Hospital this year, a daughter who makes him proud every single day. He praised Fletcher for being the backbone of our family, for supporting Bianca, for being the son-in-law he always hoped for. He toasted Preston as a visionary entrepreneur who just closed Series B funding for $3 million, whose company is changing the industry, whose future is limitless. He welcomed Sloane as a beautiful addition to the family, saying they were blessed by her presence. He even acknowledged Uncle Wade, joking that he always brings laughter to the gathering. And then, he sat down. He never said my name, not once. I sat there with my wine glass raised like everyone else, waiting for my turn, and it never came. He skipped me entirely. Didn't forget, didn't accidentally overlook, he deliberately excluded me from the family gratitude toast on Thanksgiving. I looked around the table to see if anyone else noticed, if anyone would say something, if anyone would point out the obvious omission. Bianca caught my eye for a split second, and I saw something flicker across her face. Not sympathy exactly, more like satisfaction, like she enjoyed watching me be excluded. Preston was already on his phone, having lost interest the moment the toast ended. My mother was smiling serenely, apparently seeing nothing wrong with what had just happened. I sat there with tears forming in my eyes, trying desperately not to let them fall, feeling 32 years of invisibility crush down on me all at once. After dinner, while everyone moved to the living room for dessert, I pulled my father aside in his study. I needed to know if He'd done it on purpose, or if he genuinely didn't realize what He'd done. "Dad," I said, keeping my voice low and controlled, "you didn't mention me in the toast." He looked at me with this blank expression, like he was trying to recall what I was talking about. "Didn't I?" he said, more statement than question. "I'm sure I said something about everyone." "No," I told him. "You didn't. You specifically praised Mom, Bianca, Fletcher, Preston, Sloan, even Uncle Wade. You never said my name." He sighed, that particular sigh he uses when he thinks someone is being unreasonable, and said, "Don't be so sensitive, Margot. Not everything is about you. It's just a toast. It doesn't mean anything." Then he walked away, leaving me standing alone in his study, and went to join Preston in a conversation about tech stocks. That's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't oversight. This was how they truly saw me, as someone not worth mentioning, not worth including, not worth even the bare minimum of acknowledgement. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked tired, sad, older than 32. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn a place in this family, and I finally understood that no amount of achievement, no level of success, no degree of effort would ever be enough. The problem wasn't me. The problem was them, and more specifically, the problem was that I kept showing up, kept hoping, kept giving them opportunities to hurt me. So I made my decision right there, leaning against the marble sink in my parents' guest bathroom. I would leave early, go home, and activate the backup plan I'd been preparing for 2 weeks. I would host my own Thanksgiving with people who actually valued me, and I would tell a truth that would shatter their perfect family image forever. Because I'd discovered something 2 weeks ago, something that explained everything, and they had no idea I knew. I left my parents' house at 2:30 in the afternoon, making up an excuse about a work emergency that required my immediate attention. My mother barely looked up from her conversation with Bianca when I announced I was leaving. "Oh, leaving already," she said. "Well, drive safe." That was it. No concern about my work emergency, no disappointment that I was missing dessert, nothing. Bianca said loudly enough for me to hear as I gathered my coat, "She's always so dramatic," and Preston laughed. My father was in his study on a phone call and didn't emerge to say goodbye. I walked out of that mansion knowing it was the last time I would ever attend a family event there, and nobody even noticed I was gone. I cried in my car for the first 10 minutes of the drive home. 32 years of being invisible, of being less than, of being forgotten crashed down on me all at once. I thought about my childhood, always being compared unfavorably to Bianca, who was prettier, smarter, more charming. I thought about my teenage years when my achievements in art and design were dismissed as nice hobbies, while Bianca's academic success was celebrated like she'd cured cancer. I thought about college, when my parents missed my graduation because it fell on the same day as Bianca's baby shower, and of course the baby shower was more important. I thought about my career, how I'd built a successful freelance business from nothing, won awards, signed major clients, and not once, not ever, had my parents asked about my work in any meaningful detail. They couldn't name a single client I'd worked with. They didn't know what kind of design I specialized in. They'd never asked to see my portfolio. To them, I made pictures on computers, and that was the extent of their understanding or interest. By the time I got home, it was 3 in the afternoon, which gave me exactly 4 hours before my backup plan would activate. Because here is what nobody in my family knew. 2 weeks ago, Id started planning an alternative Thanksgiving, a backup celebration in case this morning went the way every other holiday went. Id created a guest list, sent invitations, ordered catering, rented equipment. I'd done all of it in secret, telling myself that maybe I wouldn't need it, maybe this year would be different, maybe my family would finally see me. But I'd prepared it anyway, just in case. And after this morning, after the toast that erased me completely, I knew the backup plan needed to happen. I sent out a group text to everyone on my guest list confirming that yes, the party was on, 7 o'clock at my apartment. Bring your favorite dish and prepare for an important announcement. The idea had come from a therapy session 2 weeks earlier. My therapist, Dr. Simmons, had asked me a question that changed everything. What would happen, she said, if you stopped seeking their validation? What if you created your own validation, your own celebration, your own family? Id sat there in her office, considering the question, and something clicked. I didn't need my parents' approval. I didn't need my siblings' acknowledgement. I needed to surround myself with people who actually saw me, who valued me, who celebrated me. So I'd made a list of every person in my life who'd ever shown me genuine care, genuine interest, genuine love. The list was 50 people long. 50 people who weren't related to me by blood but who treated me better than my own family ever had. The guest list included Rosalie, my best friend since college, who knew every detail of my family dysfunction and had spent countless nights talking me down from anxiety attacks before family gatherings. Trent, a colleague who'd become a close friend, who'd fought for my salary increase when our boss tried to lowball me, who always asked about my projects and actually listened to the answers. Celia, my elderly neighbor who brought me homemade pie and checked on me when I was sick, who treated me with more maternal warmth than my own mother ever had. Daphne and Hugo, a couple from my art class, who invited me to dinner parties and gallery openings and made me feel like I belonged. Marjorie, my former mentor who'd believed in my talent when I was just starting out, who still called to check on my career progress. Plus 45 other people, friends from various stages of life, clients who'd become friends, colleagues who'd become family, people who'd shown me what genuine connection felt like. I'd sent the invitations 10 days ago, elegant digital designs, because of course I made them myself, with the heading, Margot's True Thanksgiving. The details were simple. 7 in the evening, my apartment, potluck style, so everyone could contribute something meaningful. And at the bottom, a note that intrigued everyone. Important announcement to follow. Bring your appetite and your open heart. All 50 people had RSVP'd yes within 24 hours. Some had texted separately asking what the announcement would be. I'd kept it vague, saying only that I had something important to share, something that would explain a lot about my life. The curiosity was palpable, but I wanted to tell everyone at once, wanted them all to understand together why this gathering mattered so much. I'd spent the past 2 weeks preparing not just the party logistics, but also gathering evidence. Because the announcement I planned to make required proof. People needed to see, to understand, that I wasn't exaggerating or being dramatic. So I'd compiled a folder, both digital and physical, of documentation spanning years. Photographs from family events where I was literally cropped out of the frame before being posted to social media. Copies of the annual family newsletter going back 5 years, showing the blatant disparity in how much attention was given to each sibling. Emails from my parents, cold and transactional when sent to me, compared to warm and loving emails sent to my siblings. Preston had accidentally forwarded me one of those emails once, an effusive message from our mother telling him how proud she was, how he exceeded every expectation, how blessed they were to have him. The contrast to the brief, business-like emails I received was stark. I had screenshots from the family group chat showing how my messages were ignored while everyone else's were celebrated. And most damning, I had this morning's toast recorded on my phone, 15 minutes of praise for everyone except me, concrete audio proof that I wasn't imagining the exclusion. But the evidence folder also contained something else, something Id discovered completely by accident 7 months ago, something that explained 32 years of being treated as less than. In April, my mother had asked me to fix her laptop because it was running slowly. I'm good with technology, so Id agreed, taking it home to clean up the files and run some updates. While sorting through documents to free up space, Id found a folder labeled Medical Records. Normally I wouldn't have opened it, but the file size was huge and I needed to see what could be deleted. Inside were various health documents, old test results, vaccination records, normal stuff. And then I saw a file titled DNA Results with a date from 7 months prior. Curious, Id opened it. What I found made my entire world shift on its axis. My mother had taken one of those commercial ancestry DNA tests, probably trying to trace her Italian heritage like half the country was doing. But what Shed discovered instead was that I wasn't her biological daughter. The results were clear and undeniable. Douglas, my father, showed as a 50% genetic match to me, exactly what you'd expect from a biological parent. But Constance showed 0%. No match at all. Not even a distant cousin connection. Nothing. Id stared at that screen for probably 20 minutes, my mind racing through implications. Then Id done something perhaps unethical but absolutely necessary. Id copied the files to a thumb drive before returning the laptop. I needed to understand what this meant. Over the following weeks, Id done my own research, cross-referencing dates and digging through old documents I found in my parents' house during subsequent visits. Id pieced together a story. 32 years ago, my father had an affair with a woman named Geneva, who worked as a paralegal in his office. Shed gotten pregnant. Shed died during childbirth from complications, with no living family to take me. And Douglas had brought me home to Constance. His wife Ho'd just given birth to Bianca 6 months earlier, and somehow convinced or coerced her into raising me as her own. That discovery explained everything. Why Constance had never bonded with me the way she bonded with Bianca and Preston. Why I was always treated as less than, less valuable, less worthy of love. Why my accomplishments were dismissed and my presence merely tolerated. Every time Constance looked at me, she saw her husband's betrayal. She saw the affair. She saw the dead mistress. She saw 32 years of being forced to raise another woman's child. And Shed never forgiven me for existing. The revelation was devastating and clarifying at once. It wasn't my fault. It had never been my fault. There was nothing I could have done to earn her love, because the problem wasn't me, it was what I represented to her. Id confronted my father privately 1 week ago, showing him the DNA results Id found. He'd broken down immediately, crying in a way I'd never seen, admitting everything. Had begged me not to tell anyone, said it would destroy the family, said Constance had sacrificed so much to raise me and deserved privacy. Had claimed he always hoped she would grow to love me, that time would heal the wound of his betrayal. I'd told him I needed time to process, that I would decide what to do with the information. Had looked relieved, thinking I would keep the secret to preserve family harmony. He had no idea that his toast this morning, his complete erasure of me from the family gratitude speech, would be the final straw that made me decide to reveal everything. So now, standing in my apartment at 3 in the afternoon on Thanksgiving, I prepared for the evening. I arranged the rented tables and chairs. I set out serving dishes. I reviewed my speech notes. And I prepared to tell 50 people the truth about my family, to show them the evidence of my exclusion, and to reveal the secret that explained it all. My biological family had spent 32 years making me invisible. Tonight I would make damn sure everyone saw me clearly. At 7 o'clock exactly, my doorbell started ringing. Rosalie arrived first, as I knew she would, carrying a homemade green bean casserole and wearing an expression of fierce protective love. She'd known about my family's treatment of me since college, had witnessed some of the worst moments, and had been fully supportive when I told her about my plan 2 weeks ago. "You went through with it?" she said as soon as I opened the door. "You actually went to their house this morning?" I nodded, and she immediately pulled me into a hug. "And," she prompted. "Worse than ever," I told her. "He didn't say my name once in the toast, not once." She pulled back, anger flashing in her eyes. Then tonight is exactly what you need. Are you really going to do it? Are you really going to tell everyone? Every word, I confirmed. She squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. Within 30 minutes, my apartment was transformed. 50 people filled every corner of my space, and instead of feeling crowded, it felt warm. This was the complete opposite of this morning's gathering in my parents' cold mansion. Here, there was genuine laughter, real hugs, people who were actually happy to see me. Every person who walked through the door greeted me with enthusiasm, with interest in how I was doing, with warmth that felt like sunshine after years in shadow. The contrast to my biological family's indifference was so stark it almost hurt. Celia arrived with her famous apple pie, the one Shed brought me when I had the flu last year and couldn't cook for myself, checking on me daily until I recovered. "My dear," she said, cupping my face with her soft elderly hands, "you look beautiful, that color suits you wonderfully." It was such a simple compliment, but my eyes immediately welled up because my mother had never, not once in 32 years, complimented my appearance. Constance had spent my entire life making subtle comments about how Bianca had gotten the good genes, how Preston was so handsome, while never saying anything positive about how I looked. But Celia, this 78-year-old woman who'd only known me for 3 years, showed me more maternal affection in that one moment than Constance had in 3 decades. Trent arrived next, bringing wine and his infectious energy. He came straight over to where I was arranging food on the dining table and said without preamble, "Hey, I heard from the boss today. He loved your pitch earlier this week. You're definitely getting that promotion to creative director." I stopped what I was doing and stared at him. "Really?" I asked. "Really," he confirmed. "You earned it, Margot. Everyone knows you're the most talented designer in the company." Tears started forming again, and I had to blink them back. Someone had noticed my professional achievement. Someone had celebrated it with me. Someone had fought for my success. The contrast to this morning, when Id mentioned my $50,000 client and been immediately dismissed, was almost too much to bear. Marjorie arrived fashionably late, as she always did, sweeping in with the kind of confidence that came from decades of success in the design world. Shed mentored me when I was first starting my freelance career, had introduced me to clients, had advocated for me in spaces where I didn't yet have a reputation. She found me in the kitchen and said, "I'm so proud of you, Margot. You've built something real, something lasting. You've exceeded every expectation I had when you were my student." I hugged her tightly, breathing in her perfume, letting myself feel the pride she was expressing, the validation I'd been starving for my entire life. These were the words Id desperately wanted to hear from my parents, the acknowledgement that I mattered, that Id accomplished something meaningful. By 8 o'clock, everyone had arrived and the party was in full swing. People were eating, drinking, laughing, sharing stories. The energy in the room was electric, joyful, genuine. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Not the cold, competitive, conditional atmosphere of my parents' house, but this warmth, this acceptance, this celebration of each other. I moved through the room, talking to different groups, and everywhere I went, people included me, listened to me, valued my presence. Nobody was checking their phone while I talked. Nobody was dismissing my words or changing the subject. Nobody was treating me like I was invisible. At 8:30, I decided it was time. I moved to the center of the room and gently tapped my wine glass with a spoon. The chatter gradually quieted as people turned their attention to me. "Thank you all for coming to my true Thanksgiving," I began, looking around at the faces of people who actually cared about me. "I need to explain why I called it that, why you're all here instead of me being at my family's gathering." I could feel Rosalie watching me supportively from the corner, could see Trent giving me an encouraging nod. I paused, gathering my courage, then continued. "I want to go around the room and thank some of you personally, because unlike the toast I heard this morning, I want to make sure every person who matters to me knows they matter." I spent the next 15 minutes moving through the room, stopping to acknowledge different people specifically. "Rosalie, thank you for answering my 3 in the morning panic calls before family events, for talking me through my anxiety, for being the sister I deserved. Trent, thank you for fighting for my salary increase when our boss tried to underpay me, for advocating for me in meetings, for seeing my value as a colleague and friend. Celia, thank you for bringing me soup when I was sick, for checking on me every day, for showing me what maternal care actually looks like. Marjorie, thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, for opening doors for me in this industry, for mentoring me with genuine investment in my success. Daphne and Hugo, thank you for including me in your art community, for inviting me to events where I feel like I belong, for treating me like family even though we've only known each other 2 years. I continued around the room, making sure to acknowledge everyone, to make them feel seen and valued, to do for them what had never been done for me. By the time I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the apartment. People were hugging each other, thanking each other, creating this beautiful web of appreciation and connection. This was what the holiday was supposed to be about. Genuine gratitude for genuine relationships, not performative toasts that excluded people. Everyone in this room felt valued, seen, celebrated. It was the exact opposite of every family gathering I'd ever attended. Then I took a deep breath and let my tone shift. Now I need to tell you all something, I said, and the room went completely silent. You've heard me talk about my biological family over the years. Some of you have met them briefly. Some of you have only heard my stories. Some of you have asked why they're not here tonight. There's a reason for all of that. This morning, I attended Thanksgiving with them. It was the last time I will ever do that. Someone called out from the back, "What happened?" I let the question hang in the air for a moment, then said, "What always happens. I was invisible." I pulled out my phone and held it up. He praised my mother, my sister, my brother-in-law, my sister's fiancé, even my uncle. He mentioned everyone except me. He never said my name. Not once. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Hugo spoke up, his voice incredulous. "Your father didn't mention you in the toast at all?" "Not at all," I confirmed. "And that's just today. That's just the most recent example of a pattern that's been going on my entire life." I walked over to where I'd set up my laptop connected to the TV. "I've been documenting everything," I said. "I want to show you something. I want you to understand what I've been living with, so you understand why what I'm about to reveal matters so much." I opened my laptop and pulled up the first file, my hands surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. "This is my family's annual Christmas newsletter," I said as the document appeared on the TV screen. "For those of you who don't know, my mother sends this out every year to about 200 relatives and family friends. It's supposed to summarize what each family member accomplished during the year. I'm going to read you portions from the last 5 years." I pulled up the newsletter from 5 years ago and began reading aloud. Bianca had an extraordinary year, completing her certification in nonprofit management and successfully organizing 3 major fundraising events. Her children, Hadley and Brooks, continue to thrive, with Hadley starting kindergarten and Brooks showing remarkable artistic ability. Preston launched his technology startup this year, securing initial funding and assembling a talented team. He was also featured in Tech Innovator magazine as one of the region's emerging entrepreneurs. I paused, then continued. "And here's the part about me. Margot continues her design work. That's it. 1 sentence. 11 words for my entire year." I clicked to the next newsletter. Year 2. Bianca's charity work reached new heights this year, with her children's hospital fundraiser raising $150,000. She was honored at the annual Healthcare Heroes Gala. Preston's company doubled in size and secured Series A funding. He also got engaged to the lovely Sloane. And about me, Margot is doing well. 5 words this time. I wasn't even worth a full sentence. The room was dead silent now, everyone staring at the screen. I continued through year 3. This year, the Bennett family took an amazing 2-week vacation to Italy, exploring Rome, Florence, and Venice. The children loved learning about art history. Preston received the Young Entrepreneur Award from the Chamber of Commerce. 0 mention of me, even though I'd won a regional design award that year. I wasn't invited on the Italy trip, and my award didn't make it into the newsletter at all. Year 4's newsletter devoted half a page to Preston's engagement party, describing every detail of the event. It mentioned Bianca's children's accomplishments in school. It listed my name exactly once, in a paragraph listing all the family members, like I was just being counted for attendance. Year 5. This year's newsletter was 2 full pages long. I counted the words about each person. Bianca, 347 words. Preston, 283 words. Me, 27 words across 3 sentences. And one of those sentences was, Margot continues to live in the city. Not even a mention of what I did for a living, just a geographic location. People in the room were getting visibly upset now. Celia was shaking her head in disbelief. Trent looked angry. Marjorie had her hand over her mouth. But I wasn't done. I switched to the photo evidence. This is from last Christmas, I said, pulling up a family portrait. In the original photo, I was positioned at the far edge of the group, literally on the margin of the frame. Then I showed the version my mother had posted to her social media. It'd been cropped out entirely. The image showed my parents, Bianca, Fletcher, Preston, Sloane, and the children. I was gone, edited out of my own family photo. The caption read, "My beautiful family." I showed another photo, this one from Bianca's birthday party 6 months ago. I'd spent 2 weeks planning that party, coordinating with the venue, arranging catering, designing the invitations. In the photo, I was visible in the background, clearly present at the event. The caption my mother posted, celebrating our darling Bianca with family and friends. No mention that I'd planned the entire thing, no acknowledgement that I was even there, despite being in the photo. Then I pulled up the email evidence, and the room's energy shifted from sympathy to outrage. This email, I explained, was sent from my mother to Bianca 3 months ago. She accidentally sent it to me as well, probably hit reply all, instead of reply. I read it aloud, my voice catching slightly on the words. Darling Bianca, I'm so proud of you. You've exceeded every dream I had for a daughter. Your father and I were just saying how blessed we are that at least one of our children turned out exactly right. I stopped reading and looked around the room. At least one of our children turned out exactly right, I repeated. That means at least one of us didn't turn out right. That child is me. Gasps filled the room. Celia stood up abruptly, her elderly hands trembling. That woman said that about you, she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. In writing? I nodded. The implication was clear. I was the child who didn't turn out right, the disappointment, the failure, despite all my achievements and success. But wait, I said, there's more. I opened the family group chat on my phone and projected it onto the TV. We have a family group chat called the Bennett clan. I'm included in it, technically. Let me show you some statistics from the last 30 days. I pulled up the analytics ID compiled. In the last month, there have been 412 messages in this chat. I sent 18 of them. Responses I received to my messages. 4. All from Preston, all single words like cool or nice. Messages about Bianca's children. 97. Messages about Preston's company. 63. Messages asking about my life or work. 0. I scrolled to a specific exchange from 6 weeks ago. Here's an example, I said. 6 weeks ago, I shared news in the chat. I read my message aloud. Hey everyone, just wanted to share that I won the Regional Design Award. It's a really big deal in my industry. Radio silence for 2 hours. Then watch what happens. I scrolled down to show Bianca's message that came 2 hours later. Hadley lost her first tooth today, followed by 12 photos of her daughter. Immediately, the chat exploded with responses. Everyone congratulated Bianca, cooed over the photos, asked questions about the tooth fairy. My award announcement was buried, never acknowledged, completely forgotten. Trent stood up from his seat. This is abuse, he said loudly. This is financial abuse and emotional abuse. This is psychological torture. Celia nodded vigorously. I've raised 4 children, she said, her voice firm despite her tears. This is not how parents behave. This is not what family does. You don't treat your own child like they're invisible. But I wasn't finished. The next piece of evidence was the most damaging. Last month, I said, I was at my parents' house and accidentally saw a document in my father's office. It was a preview of their will. I pulled up a photo ID taken of the document with my phone, My parents have a combined net worth of approximately $4 million. According to this will, here's how their estate will be divided. Bianca's inheritance, $1.5 million plus the vacation home in Lake Tahoe. Preston's inheritance, $1.5 million plus a fund specifically designated for expanding his company. My inheritance, $200,000 with a stipulation that it must be used for practical purposes only, specifically education or a home down payment, not for business ventures. I let that sink in. My siblings are each getting $1.5 million. I'm getting $200,000, which is about 15% of what they're getting. And there's a note in the will explaining this. I read it aloud. Margot has always been independently minded and will understand this equitable distribution based on need and family contribution. Equitable. They called it equitable to give me 15% of what my siblings receive. The room erupted. People were talking over each other, expressing outrage, asking how this could be legal. Marjorie stood up, her face flushed with anger. "Margot," she said, "this is worse than you ever told me. How did you survive this? How did you stay sane growing up in this environment?" My voice broke slightly as I answered. "I survived because of people like all of you. I survived because of people who see me, who value me, who celebrate my achievements instead of minimizing them. You are my real family, not them. They share my DNA, but you share my life. You show up for me. You care about me. You see me. That's what family really means." Rosalie came to stand beside me, putting her arm around my shoulders. "But there's more, isn't there?" she said quietly, looking at me with knowing eyes. "This isn't the bombshell yet." I nodded, taking a shaky breath. "What I've shown you is painful," I said to the room. "It's hard to see, hard to understand how a family could treat someone this way. But it's not the bombshell. There's something else, something I discovered 2 weeks ago. Something that explains everything. Something that, when revealed, will destroy my family's perfect image completely." I was about to continue when my doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Rosalie looked at me in confusion. "Who's that?" she asked. "Everyone's already here." I checked my phone and felt my blood run cold. My face must have shown my shock because Rosalie immediately asked, "What's wrong?" I looked up at the room full of people, my real family, and said the words I never thought I'd have to say tonight. "It's my mother. Constance is here." For a moment, nobody moved. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. I walked slowly to the door, my heart hammering in my chest, and opened it. Constance stood there in her Thanksgiving finest, her face a mask of cold fury. Behind her stood Bianca, arms crossed, looking equally angry. Neither had been invited, neither had any right to be here. "How did you know I was having people over?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Constance didn't answer. She simply pushed past me into the apartment, her eyes sweeping over the 50 people. The food, the celebration. "What is this, Margot?" she demanded. "You left our family Thanksgiving to throw a party? How did you even know about this?" I repeated. Bianca held up her phone with a smirk. "Someone posted a photo on social media and tagged you. I follow your friends. I saw it." She said it like she'd caught me committing a crime, like I'd done something shameful by celebrating with people who actually liked me. Constance turned to address the entire room, her voice dripping with false apology. "I apologize for my daughter's rudeness," she announced, as if she had any authority here. She left our family gathering abruptly, and apparently came here to play victim for attention. The room went deadly silent. Everyone was staring at this elegant woman who'd just barged into my home and insulted me in front of 50 people. "Mother," I said firmly, "you need to leave. Not until you explain yourself," she shot back. "This is pathetic, Margot," Bianca added from behind her. "Even for you, this is a new low." Rosalie stepped forward, placing herself between Constance and me. "Mrs. Bennett," she said, her voice hard. "You're not welcome here." Constance looked at her with disdain. "And who are you?" she asked. "I'm Margot's best friend," Rosalie replied. "I'm the person who's held her while she cried after every single one of your family events. I'm the person who's witnessed years of your emotional abuse." Constance's face twitched. How dramatic, she said dismissively. I'm sure Douglas mentioned everyone in the toast. You're all just encouraging her victim mentality. He didn't, Rosalie said flatly. Margot recorded it. Would you like to hear it? I pulled out my phone before Constance could respond and connected it to the speaker. The recording of this morning's toast played through the apartment. Everyone listened as Douglas' voice praised Constance, praised Bianca, praised Fletcher, praised Preston, praised Sloane, even praised Uncle Wade. 15 minutes of acknowledgement and gratitude. And then the recording ended. The silence where my name should have been was deafening. Constance's face twitched again, but she recovered quickly. This is taken out of context, she said. Trent spoke up from across the room. What context makes that okay? What context explains not mentioning your own daughter at Thanksgiving? Constance's expression hardened, and she pivoted from defense to attack. Margot has always been oversensitive, she said, her voice taking on that tone she used when discussing people she considered beneath her. She craves attention constantly. Bianca and Preston have real accomplishments. Margot makes pictures on computers. We've tried to include her, but she's always so difficult. Bianca jumped in, emboldened by her mother's attack. Mom's right, she said. Margot is jealous. She's jealous of my marriage, my children, my life. She's jealous that Preston is actually successful. This whole party is just another desperate cry for attention. I stood there, saying nothing, letting them reveal exactly who they were to a room full of witnesses. Every word they spoke proved everything had been saying. Marjorie stood up, her voice cutting through the room with professional authority. I've known Margot for 8 years, she said. She's one of the most talented designers in this region. She's won multiple awards. She's built a thriving business from nothing. Trent added, she just signed a $50,000 client this week. Constance actually laughed. 50,000? Preston's company is valued at 20 million. See, this is the problem. Nothing Margot does is ever enough because she doesn't understand what real success looks like. The room erupted in angry responses, people defending me, calling out Constance's cruelty, but I held up my hand for silence. When the room quieted, I looked directly at Constance and said, You want to know why I'm really here tonight? You want to know why I left your house? Why I invited 50 people who aren't related to me by blood? Because these people are my actual family. Constance's laugh was sharp and bitter. Don't be ridiculous, she said. We're your family. No, I replied, my voice calm but firm. You're the people who share my DNA. Family shows up. Family sees you. Family celebrates you. You have never been my family. Bianca's face twisted with anger. This is exactly why nobody likes you, Margot, she spat. You're always complaining, always making everything about yourself. Maybe if you had accomplished something actually worth celebrating, Dad would have mentioned you in his toast. The room went completely still. That statement was too far, too cruel, even for Bianca. And it gave me the opening I needed. Thank you, Bianca, I said quietly. Thank you for saying that in front of 50 witnesses. Because now everyone here understands exactly what Eve endured. And now I can tell you all the real reason you're here tonight. I turned to face Constance directly. I was going to wait to reveal this, I said. I was going to build up to it. But since you came to my home uninvited, since you attacked me in front of my real family, I'll tell you first. 2 weeks ago, I found something. Something that explains 32 years of being treated like I don't matter. Something that explains why Bianca and Preston are golden children and I'm an afterthought. Something that explains why you've never loved me. Constance's face went completely white. Margot, don't, she said, and for the first time, there was fear in her voice. I found the DNA test results, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room exploded into confused murmurs. Bianca looked between us. What DNA test? She demanded. The one Mother took 7 months ago, I replied. The one she thought she deleted from her computer. The one I found when I fixed her laptop in April. I pulled out the folder I'd prepared and held it up. Should I tell them, Mother? Or will you? Constance was frozen, her perfect composure completely shattered. Tell us what? Bianca demanded, her voice rising. What DNA test? What is she talking about? I looked around the room at 50 faces watching this family drama unfold. Then I looked back at Constance and said the words that would change everything. The DNA test that proved I'm not your daughter. The silence that followed was absolute. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. 50 people stood frozen, processing what Id just said. Bianca broke the silence first. That's impossible, she whispered. It's science, Bianca, I replied. DNA doesn't lie. Dad is my biological father, but Constance is not my biological mother. Bianca turned slowly to look at Constance. Mom, she said, her voice shaking. Tell her she's wrong. Tell her this is crazy. But Constance said nothing. Her face drained of all color, her hands trembling at her sides. The silence stretched on. Mom, Bianca repeated, louder this time. Say something. I pulled out the printed DNA results and held them up. 7 months ago, Constance took an ancestry DNA test, I explained to the room. One of those popular commercial services, trying to trace her Italian heritage. What she found instead was me. The DNA match showed a 50% match to Douglas, which is normal for a biological father. But the match to Constance was 0%. No genetic connection at all. That's not possible, Bianca said again. But her voice was weaker now. She was looking at Constance, searching her face for denial, for explanation, for anything. It's completely possible, I said. In fact, it's the truth. I am not Constance's biological daughter. I pulled out more documents from my folder. After I found the DNA results, I did my own research. I dug through old files, cross-referenced dates, found birth certificates and hospital records. 32 years ago, Douglas had an affair with a woman named Geneva who worked as a paralegal in his office. She got pregnant. She died in childbirth from complications. And Douglas brought me home to Constance, who'd just given birth to Bianca 6 months earlier, and made her raise me as her own. The room was so quiet I could hear people breathing. Everyone was staring at Constance, waiting for her to deny it, to call me a liar, to defend herself. But she didn't. She just stood there, silent and pale. Mom, Bianca said, and this time her voice broke. Please tell me this isn't true. Another long silence. Then, barely a whisper, Constance said, yes, that one word detonated like a bomb. Bianca stumbled backward as if she'd been physically hit. What? She gasped. Yes, Constance repeated, louder this time. Yes, it's true. Your father cheated. The woman died. I had no choice. She looked at me with sudden venom. I had no choice but to take you in. Tell them the whole story, I said, my voice hard. Tell them what really happened. Constance's composure was cracking, bitterness seeping through like poison. I had just given birth to Bianca, she said, her voice shaking. We had a 6-month-old daughter. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, trying to figure out how to be a mother. And your father came home with another baby. A baby from his mistress. A baby from the woman had been sleeping with while I was pregnant with our daughter. She looked around the room as if seeking sympathy. He begged me to raise you as mine. Said the woman had no family. Said you had nowhere to go. Said it was the Christian thing to do. He promised we'd tell no one, that you'd be ours, that we'd give you the Bennett name, and nobody would ever know the truth. And like a fool, I agreed. I agreed to raise the child of my husband's affair. I did my duty. Your duty, I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. That's what I was to you. Not a daughter. Not a child who deserved love. Just an obligation. Just a daily reminder of your husband's betrayal. Constance's face twisted with resentment. Yes, she hissed. Yes, you were an obligation. Every time I looked at you, I saw his infidelity. I saw the woman he chose over me, even briefly. I saw my humiliation, my pain, my sacrifice. I tried, Margot. I fed you, clothed you, sent you to good schools, but I cannot love the child of my husband's affair. Am not a saint. The room erupted. People were shouting, some at Constance, some in support of me. Celia was crying, saying over and over, that poor baby, she was just a baby. Trent was yelling about child abuse. Marjorie was telling Constance that children don't choose how they're conceived, that punishing an innocent child was unconscionable. But I just stood there, tears streaming down my face, finally understanding why I'd spent 32 years feeling like I didn't belong. Bianca was having her own crisis in the corner. So, Margot is my half-sister, not my full sister? Constance turned to her. Biologically, yes. Bianca looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Did Preston know? No, I said. Only you and Douglas knew. Well, I amended, and now everyone in this room knows. Someone asked the question I'd been waiting for. Who was your biological mother? Her name was Geneva, I said, and saying her name felt sacred somehow. She was 23 years old. She worked as a paralegal in Dad's office. She died from complications during my birth. She has no living family. I am the only piece of her left in this world. And I was raised by a woman who resented my existence every single day of my life. Rosalie asked, "Where's your father? Does he know you found out?" "I confronted him last week," I said. He cried. Said he was sorry. Said he'd forced Constance to keep the secret. Said he'd hoped she would grow to love me eventually. She never did. He asked me not to tell anyone, to keep the family intact. I told him I needed time to think. This morning's toast made my decision. When Dad stood there and praised everyone but me, when he pretended I didn't exist, I realized they will never change. They will never see me as equal. Because to Constance, the affair baby. To Douglas, his guilt made flesh. But to these people, I gestured around the room. Margot. Enough. I'm valued. Constance moved toward the door. I'm leaving, she announced. Bianca, come on. But Bianca didn't move. She was staring at Constance with an expression I couldn't quite read. Bianca, Constance snapped. I need a minute, Mom, Bianca said quietly. Constance's face flushed with anger. Don't you turn on me too, she hissed. You punished her for something Dad did, Bianca said, her voice getting stronger. She was a baby. She didn't do anything wrong. And you made her life hell because you couldn't forgive Dad. Don't lecture me, Constance shot back. I raised her. I sacrificed my happiness for her. I deserve some credit. You deserve nothing, I said, my voice cutting through the room. Get out of my home. Constance stared at me for a long moment, and I saw decades of resentment and bitterness in her eyes. Then she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. The silence she left behind was heavy with shock and grief and vindication all at once. After Constance left, Bianca stood in my apartment looking lost and confused, like the ground had shifted beneath her feet and she didn't know which way was up anymore. Everyone else in the room was giving her space, giving both of us space, unsure what to do in the aftermath of what they'd just witnessed. Finally, Bianca sat down heavily on my couch and said, I need to understand this. Understand what? I asked, still standing, still on guard. Everything, she replied. My whole life is a lie. We had our first real conversation then, the first honest exchange we'd had in our entire lives. Did you always know something was wrong? She asked. I knew I was different, I told her. I knew I wasn't loved the same way you and Preston were loved, but I thought it was my fault. I thought something was defective in me, something that made me unlovable. I never imagined the truth was this. Bianca was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I participated in your exclusion. I made jokes about you. I ignored you. I was cruel. I'm just like her. Bianca started crying then, real tears, not the performative kind she usually deployed. I remember things now with new context, she said through her tears. When we were kids, Mom would spend an hour braiding my hair, making it perfect. She barely touched yours. You got hand-me-downs while I got new clothes for school. I got piano lessons and dance classes. You asked for art supplies and got told they were too expensive. I thought it was because I was older, because I was more important. But it was because you weren't hers. Yes, I confirmed simply. Bianca looked up at me, her face blotchy and wet. I'm sorry, Margot. I'm so sorry. I was terrible to you. I enjoyed being the favorite. I didn't question why you weren't included the same way. I learned how to treat you from Mom, and I never stopped to think if it was wrong. I stood there listening, feeling nothing particularly strong. Part of me had waited my whole life to hear Bianca apologize. Now that it was happening, I felt mostly numb. You were taught to treat me as less, I said. You learned it from Constance. That doesn't excuse it, Bianca replied. No, I agreed. It doesn't. I don't know if we can have a relationship, I told her honestly. You've hurt me for 3 decades. One apology doesn't fix that. Bianca nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. But I want to try, if you'll let me. Not today, not tomorrow. But someday, maybe we could start over. I considered this. Maybe, I said finally. But I need time. Years, probably. I need to heal from this. I need to build a life that isn't centered on trying to earn love from people who can't give it. Bianca accepted this and left quietly a few minutes later, subdued and thoughtful. About 30 minutes after Bianca left, Preston arrived. Someone, probably Constance, had called him in a panic. He burst through my door without knocking, fury radiating off him. "What the hell, Margot?" he yelled. "Did Mother tell you what I found?" I asked calmly. "Some nonsense about DNA tests," he spat. "You're tearing this family apart over a test. Are you that desperate for attention?" "The test proves I'm not Constance's daughter," I said. "It proves Dad had an affair and forced Constance to raise me. It explains everything." Preston looked shocked for about 5 seconds. Then he shrugged. "So what?" he said. "So your dad's affair, baby? That doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," I replied. "It explains 32 years of abuse and neglect," Preston scoffed. "Abuse? Mom fed you, housed you, paid for your education. That's not abuse, that's generosity. She didn't owe you anything and she gave you everything. Stop being so dramatic." Trent stepped forward, his voice dangerous. "She's been emotionally abused for 32 years because of a secret that wasn't her fault. She was treated as less than because your mother couldn't forgive your father's infidelity. But Preston didn't care. You're really going to blow up this family over this?" he asked me. "Dad made a mistake. Mom handled it the best she could. You're fine. You have a job. You have a life. Stop being so selfish." "Get out," I said quietly. He stared at me. "You're choosing these random people over your own family?" "They're not random people," I replied. "They're my real family. You're just people I share DNA with. And yes, I'm choosing them. Now get out of my home." Preston left, shaking his head in disgust. And I knew in that moment that Preston and I were done. Bianca at least showed remorse. At least tried to understand. Preston didn't care. To him, I was still just being dramatic. Still just seeking attention. Still just not worth the effort. After he left, Rosalie came over and hugged me tightly. "Hez as bad as your mother," she said into my shoulder. "Worse," I replied. "Because Constance has an excuse, however terrible. She was betrayed and traumatized and forced into an impossible situation. Preston has no excuse. He just doesn't think him worth respecting." The party gradually resumed after the drama ended. People were shaken but supportive, gathering around me in small groups, offering comfort and solidarity. Celia stood up and asked for everyone's attention. She gave a beautiful speech about chosen family, about how blood doesn't make family but love does. She talked about having 4 biological children, 2 of whom didn't speak to her anymore, but having 7 chosen children who showed up for her consistently. "Everyone in this room loves you, Margot," she said. "That makes us your real family." One by one, other people shared their own stories of family pain and chosen families and surviving rejection. I realized I wasn't alone in this. My pain was valid. My decision to cut ties was supported by 50 people who understood that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. At 11 o'clock, I stood up again for one final toast. "Thank you for witnessing that," I said to the room. "I know it was uncomfortable and painful. But I needed you to understand why I invited you here, why this matters so much. I spent 32 years at a table where I was invisible. Tonight, I sat at a table where I'm seen. This is my new tradition. This is my new family. Welcome to the first annual True Thanksgiving." My phone started buzzing then with texts from Douglas. "Margot, we need to talk. Your mother is devastated. You've humiliated this family." Call me immediately. I showed the text to Rosalie. What are you going to do? She asked. Nothing, I said. I'm done responding to their demands. I typed one final message to Douglas. I found out I'm not Constance's daughter, and your first concern is her devastation? Not my pain? Not my 32 years of emotional neglect? This is exactly the problem. I will not be attending any more family events. I will not be reading family group chats. I will not be accepting your calls. If Bianca genuinely wants to build a relationship someday, I'm open to that. But I'm done with you and Constance. I'm done with Preston. I'm done being invisible. I hit send and then blocked Douglas' number. I blocked Constance's number. I blocked Preston's number. I left Bianca's number unblocked because she'd shown a glimmer of genuine remorse, but I wasn't making any promises. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. For the first time in my life, I was free. The party wound down around 1 a.m. The last guests trickled out, each one hugging me tightly, promising to stay in touch, making sure I knew I wasn't alone. Marjorie held my face in her hands and said, "You're brave, Margot. You're going to be okay. You're going to be better than okay." Trent promised that if I needed anything, day or night, I should call him. Celia invited me to Sunday dinner at her place, then added, "Forever, you're invited forever." These people, these chosen family members, they filled the spaces that my biological family had left empty. After everyone left, Rosalie stayed to help me clean up. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, gathering plates and cups, putting away leftover food. Finally, she asked, "How do you feel?" I thought about the question. "Free," I said. "For the first time in my life, I feel free. I don't have to try to earn love that will never come. I don't have to attend dinners where I'm invisible. I don't have to pretend we're a happy family. I can just be myself, surrounded by people who actually value me." Rosalie smiled and hugged me. "You did the right thing," she said. "I know it doesn't feel like it yet, but you did." 3 days later on Monday, I was at work when an email came through from Constance. The subject line read, "Family Christmas." My hand hovered over the delete button, but curiosity made me open it. "Despite your outburst on Thanksgiving, we expect you at Christmas dinner. We don't discuss family business with outsiders. What happens in our family stays in our family. Your father and I have decided to move past this. You should too. Dinner is at 3 p.m. on Christmas Day. Don't be late." I read it twice, marveling at the audacity. They expected me to just show up, to pretend nothing had happened, to go back to being invisible. I deleted the email without responding. 1 week later, Bianca reached out via text. "Can we meet for coffee? Just us?" I stared at the message for a long time. Rosalie's advice was simple. You don't owe her anything, but if you're curious, go. I agreed to meet her at a neutral coffee shop. The meeting was awkward at first, both of us unsure how to navigate this new dynamic. Bianca told me she'd shared everything with Fletcher, her husband. "He was horrified," she said. "He told me if Eid treated his sister the way I treated you, he'd divorce me. That woke me up. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand how I became so cruel, trying to be better." I listened without saying much. "That's good," I finally said. "But it doesn't fix what's broken between us." "I know," Bianca replied. "But maybe someday? Maybe we could try?" I told her honestly that I needed time, years probably, before I could even consider rebuilding a relationship with her. She accepted this with more grace than I expected. 2 weeks later on Christmas Day, I didn't go to my family's dinner. Instead, I hosted Chosen Family Christmas at my apartment. 20 people came, including Celia, Rosalie, Trent, Marjorie, and others from my true Thanksgiving. It was the first Christmas where I felt actual joy, where I wasn't bracing for insults or dismissals, where I could just relax and celebrate with people who loved me. During the celebration, Douglas called from an unknown number, having apparently forgotten I'd blocked him. I answered accidentally before checking the caller ID. "Where are you?" he demanded. "Christmas dinner started an hour ago." "I'm at my own Christmas celebration," I replied calmly. "This is ridiculous," he said. "You need to stop this tantrum and come home." "This isn't a tantrum, Dad. This is a boundary. I'm not coming to family events anymore because you don't treat me like family. Because of something that happened 32 years ago, he asked, incredulous. Because Constance couldn't love me, I corrected. Because you prioritized her comfort over my well-being for my entire life. Because none of you see me as equal to Bianca and Preston. We love you, he tried. No, I said firmly. You tolerate me. There's a difference. I'm done being tolerated. I hung up and blocked the new number. My New Year's resolution was simple: choose myself. I started individual therapy to work through 32 years of trauma. I grieved for Geneva, the mother I never knew, the woman who died bringing me into the world. I grieved for the family I'd wanted, but never had. And slowly, I began to heal. In March, I received a letter from Douglas' lawyer. My inheritance had been updated. Instead of $200,000, I would now receive $50,000, with a note stating the reduction was due to estrangement from family and rejection of family values. I actually laughed when I read it. I called Rosalie immediately. They cut me out of the will, I told her. Are you okay? She asked, concern in her voice. I'm relieved, I said honestly. Now I don't owe them anything, not even the pretense of relationship for money. 6 months after that Thanksgiving, I was thriving. My business was growing faster than ever. I signed 5 major clients and was featured in a prestigious design magazine. I was building a life surrounded by people who valued me, people who celebrated my successes, people who showed up for me consistently. I hadn't spoken to Douglas, Constance, or Preston in 6 months. I exchanged occasional surface-level texts with Bianca, nothing deep but civil. And I was okay with that. More than okay, actually. I was happy. 1 year later, I hosted the 2nd annual True Thanksgiving. 75 people attended this time, the tradition growing as word spread about what I was creating. During my toast, I reflected on the year. 1 year ago, I made the hardest decision of my life, I said to the room. I walked away from the people who shared my blood but not my values. I chose myself. I chose people who see me. It was the best decision I ever made. The room erupted in applause and I felt tears of joy rather than pain for the first time in what felt like forever. During dinner, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened it to find Bianca standing there alone, without Fletcher or the kids. I know I wasn't invited, she said quietly, but I left their Thanksgiving. I couldn't sit through another one of those toasts. Dad praised Preston for 15 minutes, talked about Mom's charity work, and then he said, and we're grateful Margot chose her own path, even if we don't understand it. That was your mention. 1 sentence. I stood up and left. Can I stay here? I looked at my half-sister standing in my doorway, genuinely remorseful, genuinely trying. This didn't erase 32 years of cruelty. This didn't automatically make us family. But it was a start. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Maybe years from now, Bianca and I would have a real relationship. Maybe not. But I was no longer desperate for family approval. I had my own approval. I had a room full of people who loved me. I had chosen myself. And in doing so, I'd found my real family. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and I was alone, I looked at photos from the evening on my phone. Room after room full of people who loved me, who saw me, who celebrated me. I thought about Geneva, my biological mother who I'd never known. I whispered to her memory, I wish I'd known you, but maybe you're watching somehow. Maybe you see that I'm okay now. I found my people. I found myself. I found the family I deserved, not the one I was born into, but the one I chose. I opened my journal and wrote one final entry to close out the year. I spent 32 years trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. I thought something was wrong with me. But the only thing wrong was accepting crumbs and calling it a feast. Family isn't who you're born to. Family is who shows up, who sees you, who celebrates you, who fights for you. I have that now. Not because of blood, but because of choice. I chose myself first. Then I chose people who chose me back. That's what family really means. I closed the journal and smiled, feeling lighter than I'd felt in my entire life. My phone rang, and it was Rosalie. How are you feeling? She asked. Grateful, I replied honestly. Not for the family I was born into, but for the family I created. They don't know what they lost, Rosalie said. No, I agreed. But I know what I gained. Everything. I gained everything. So now I want to ask you, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever had to choose between blood relatives and chosen family? Drop your answer in the comments below because I want to hear your stories. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more real stories about real people navigating complex family dynamics. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone, that choosing yourself isn't selfish, that you deserve to be seen and valued. Thank you for watching my story, for witnessing my truth, for being part of this community. May you always know your worth. May you always choose people who choose you back, and may you never settle for being invisible. You matter. You are enough, and you deserve a family that celebrates you. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.